Friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. The Jedi Order is perhaps one of the oldest organizations in the Star Wars galaxy, and like most things that have survived for a long period of time, it's changed pretty drastically throughout its history. And the younger version of itself will be disappointed and saddened by the choices the older version of itself has made. If only our younger selves could go into a time machine and give us a good hard kick in the ass and remind us that video games and motorcycles are much more important than making money and going to work. Stupid adults and all your responsibilities. Anyway, today we'll be telling you the story of the Jedi Order, the canon version. If you want to learn about the Legends version, we do cover the origins of the Jedi from the expanded universe point of view. You can check out that video here. The first Jedi Temple that we know of was founded on the planet of Ach-to, several thousands of years before the Battle of Yavin. It was so long ago that the Jedi at the time still used rudimentary books to record their history. For our younger viewers, books are bundles of paper or parchment that's usually made out of plant fiber or animal feces that have written information on it. Because they existed physically and not in digital format, it meant if you didn't like the ideas on the book, you could burn it. Sometimes people would gather in large groups and burn tons of books at the same time. That was called a potluck party. Shortly after, the Jedi found the planet of Ilum, an ice-covered world with an abundance of kyber crystals. These crystals were alive in the Force and would become fundamental to the Jedi Order and power the Jedi's lightsaber. In order to become a Jedi, younglings would be sent to Ilum, where they underwent a trial known as the Gathering. The Jedi would send missionaries across the galaxy to many different planets and construct temples on them. The one on Lothal was a gateway to time and space and allowed Force wielders to see events in the past and future and time travel. Which means yes, you can now go back in time and kick Han Solo repeatedly in the nuts until Kylo Ren fades away. Eventually, a rogue Jedi started using the dark side of the Force and realized that strength and passion were the only way to truly unlock the potential of the Force. The Jedi Council confronted this rogue Jedi and ended up exiling him from the Order. But by the time he was kicked out, he had already gathered a following. These rogue Jedi would eventually turn into the Sith. This period of time was known as the 100-Year Darkness. This would start a series of wars that would plague the galaxy for the next few thousands of years. During this time, the Sith homeworld of Korriban was destroyed, leaving it a desolate wasteland devoid of life. Another grand battle was fought between the Sith and Jedi on the planet of Takodana, where Maz's castle is now located. It was during this chaotic time that kyber crystals were first weaponized into planet-killing machines. Around 5,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, the Jedi Order moved their headquarters to Coruscant and built the Jedi Temple. Some have said that it was built on a Sith shrine to contain its dark powers. But instead, the opposite happened, and the Sith shrine began corrupting the Jedi Order. Once establishing their base on Coruscant, the Jedi Order entered into the service of the Old Republic. The Jedi swore to protect democracy, the Republic, and bathrobes as formal wear. They functioned as peacekeepers, enforcing the orders of the Republic Senate. When the Old Republic finally outlawed slavery, the Jedi served as enforcers of this new law, and declared war on the Zygerian slave empire. During this time, another group of Jedi split from the main order. They were the Ordo Aspectu, and they were obsessed with obtaining immortality. This naturally caused some problems between them and the Jedi Order, but the two eventually signed an agreement where the Ordo Aspectu was allowed to continue their heresy, but under the strict watch of the Jedi Order. Unfortunately, the leader of Ordo Aspectu accidentally sucked his mind into a computer, which then activated a bunch of defensive droids, killing off the entire order. They're kind of like the Jim Jones cult, but by accident. Which is why the only time you really do hear about them anymore is on holodrama reenactments on the History Channel. And they're just one of the more interesting sects or cults that ended up splitting off from the Jedi Order. Eventually, the Old Republic would run into the Mandalorians. These were an extremely powerful people obsessed with warfare and martial prowess. The Jedi and the Mandalorians had huge ideological differences and made excellent enemies. They became locked in combat for several years, but as the war went on, the Old Republic began crumbling under the strain of constant warfare. The Mandalorian commandos even ended up raiding the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. That was 1,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, during a period known as the Dark Ages. The massive war between the Jedi and Sith Empire occurred. During this time period, hundreds of planets became battlegrounds for this Force-infused war, and at the center of it all was Coruscant, which was taken over by the Sith Empire and then reclaimed by the Jedi again. It was during this time that the infamous Darth Bane created his Rule of Two philosophy. Upon seeing the infighting and internal power struggles that sabotaged the Sith Empire, Darth Bane realized the Sith will never be victorious over the Jedi unless they change their strategy. By creating the rule of two, only two Sith would be active at a time, and they would have a symbiotic relationship in which they depended on each other. The Jedi, although victorious, were also deeply impacted by this war. It was around this time that the Jedi stepped back from military service from the Republic and took up a peacekeeping role instead. The Jedi worked alongside the judicials to help maintain stability across the Republic and enforce the Senate's will. And for the next few centuries, the Jedi would focus on chasing down pirates and drug lords and settling minor land disputes on primitive planets. The Jedi would become soft and comfortable during this peaceful time, while the Sith slowly gathered their resources and power in the shadows. But on the surface, everything seemed fine. The galaxy entered a period of peace and stability, which meant it was a boring time and no films or novels were made from this period at all. Luckily, everything spiraled out of control eventually when the Sith returned to power. When you understand something's history, you better understand it. The Jedi Temple was constantly teetering at the edge of disaster. When it became too powerful, it destroyed the galaxy. When it became too weak, something else stepped in and did it for them. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe and like us on Facebook. Thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.